got a load of questions. I'm going to ask you some questions about punk and just general.
Yeah, okay.
About just general sort of stuff. Well, I'm just having a chat basically. Do you know this band? By the way, I'm talking to my old friend Midge, who I haven't seen since, when was it, 1987?
That's what we're saying, yeah, probably 1987. Yeah.
That last time I can remember seeing you was at Glastonbury, I think, I don't know, I just remember we were all sat on an hill and you came rolling down smiling or something.
This is on the tour, was it?
I think it was,
or was it the festival?
Festival, I think.
Yeah.
I think it was some lady, I can't remember who though. And you just come bounding down the hill and you saw all this lot and you were, oh, Midge, that's it.
God, yeah.
That's like 32 years ago. But what's your name now?
ELAHN.
Yeah, I'm still struggling to pronounce that properly.
It's kind of easy.
How did that name come around then?
I guess when I came to Glastonbury, it was kind of like, I don't know, I'd kind of, you know, in the late 90s or the late 80s and through to the first few years of the 90s, I was in a band called Freebase. And I was like, and it was kind of like we were trying to create a sort of spiritual revolution through music, you know.
Right.
And so my spiritual life had really kind of been opening up then. So when I came to Glastonbury, I just, you know, my old life in London just didn't really seem relevant anymore. You know, I kind of was in a whole other world, and it was just like, it was a school nickname, you know, so it just kind of didn't really fit, and I could feel it didn't really fit in the vibration. So I just felt, you know, to what felt correct, and that was the vibration that came.
So what does the name mean then? Is it got anything?
It doesn't have a specific meaning as far as I know, but you know, in the ancient Hebrew, the El means the name of God and R is the vibration of the heart. So I just kind of always felt like to be connected with the heart of God, you know, that was my kind of, or to integrate that into ourselves.
Walking down Glastonbury with you yesterday, I mean, I was just looking at people coming up to you and sort of bowing, like stuff like that. I mean, the people, I mean, you've obviously seemed to, you know, revered them maybe in this community. There's a lot of respect for you just walking down the streets. And we were only with you for about, as we were walking down trying to find their bed and breakfast, you know, we walked up and down the street and people just coming up to you, and you could tell there was a lot of respect for what you do here and that.
I guess, you know, I mean, it's been 25 years here now, and I guess when we left Brixton and London and kind of entered into this kind of current of spirituality in a more full-time way, it was, how can I say, you know, I started working on healing, you know, and I was teaching healing, and I became like a teacher in the place. And after 10 years of building this, what started to happen, you know, I was running lots of groups and, you know, healing groups and meditations and pilgrimages. I was taking people to different places. I just closed that door.
Yeah, I always say switch your phone off. I've my phone's on as well.
So yeah, I was, where we go with that? What was the question again?
Doing healing and stuff.
Oh, that's right.
Pilgrimages and stuff.
So yeah, and basically after some time I became very well known and successful in my field, what I was doing there, and I needed a venue to do my thing, because I was always, and not only that, when we were running workshops, by the end of like 3 or 4 days, we were reaching such a deep place together in our community, you know, in the group. And then people go home, you know, and then they try to integrate it, but what essentially happens is the vibration starts to settle down and they go back into their normal vibration, you know.
And you kind of lose it.
Yeah, and I really was keen on discovering what happened if it was prolonged, you know, without any kind of break.
Yeah.
So that was my exploration of community. So I started this community, which in itself in Glastonbury is a major achievement, actually. It's kind of, Glastonbury is a great place for dreaming, but not many people like ground stuff and actually get things together. So when someone does, particularly with longevity, then, you know, I guess it's respected. But also my role has been as a spiritual teacher in that environment. I have a guru and I follow it, you know, I've been carrying that lineage, and so I've given a lot to a lot of people, you know, we're just giving to the community constantly. So
where do you see that ending up? Is there an end to it, or is it just a continuation of your spiritual journey as you are now? Or do you not know where it's going to end? You just...
I don't. It's not goal orientated as such. You know, I don't have any particular mission in my life. You know, I just want to be a good person. And you know, naturally, when I'm kind of doing what I love to do, and when I'm really connected, then my heart is open, and I want to share with everybody. And it's a natural thing. You know, I'm a generous person. You know, I like to share what I have, and I feel that in society, when we share generosity, then everyone's looked after. You know, it's obvious.
It unifies people as well, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you feel connected, because the society we've got, everything that happens out there that's supposed to be for the good of the country, blah blah blah, it does the opposite, because it's all about the greed of the individual, not building community. I mean, how we call the United Kingdom when there's nothing actually out there that unites us.
Yeah.
You know, they're just words, empty words that don't mean anything. Democracy. You know, somebody could be fracking in your back garden next week.
That's right.
You know, I mean, what's unifying about that? What's peaceful? What's community based about any of that type of stuff? Nothing. You know, so I can kind of understand why people are getting on this spiritual journey, because this society of ours, I don't think it's fulfilling for anybody.
You know, I mean, it says in the Vedic scriptures, you know, from ancient India, it says that we're now entering into what's called Kali Yuga, which is the age. It's a massive age, a big time, and it's called the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. You know, and it's the time where we are constantly confused, because we're presented with so many choices, you know, and we're being conditioned. It says also in those scriptures that our nature, as a part of the manifestation of the energy of God, is that we're called Tatastha Jiva, which means that we are borderline. We come from spirit, but we're very easily influenced by either spiritual or material energy. You know, and so basically we're very influenceable. You know.
You can see how things happen, can't you? You just see it there. You know, we're getting bombarded with things every day.
Yeah.
And you know, and we all seem to think that we're in control of what we're doing, but I don't think people understand how all this thing happened. You know, marketing. I mean, Goebbels, he come out with it. You know, if you say something or do something enough, it becomes the truth, whether it's the truth or not. And marketing kind of works. You know, they put these things in your head, and when you're looking for something, it springs things in your mind. You end up buying. It's how you end up buying products of. You know, we don't need that. I think I like what you're trying to do here. But anyway, let's get back to where it all began.
Yeah.
So where did the punk thing start for you then? How was your connection to punk?
I remember my first experience of punk, which seems like a very elementary thing, was just seeing a friend of mine having his ear pierced. You know, and to me at the time that was so shocking. I don't know, it seems like so like absolutely nothing now, but when I was like, I don't know, it was 12 years old or something, and a boy had his ear pierced, you know, of my age, I was like, you know, and then around that time my first memory of punks was when I was out one night with my brother and another friend doing a guy forks. Yeah, we had a guy, you know, you don't see that anymore, but you know, we were out with our guy begging money for fireworks, you know, and these couple of crazy looking guys, man, that were obviously like the early day punks, just like mashed up, completely kicked out, like guy all over the place, you know, give us a hard time. But that was my first ever experience of punk. But I went through quite a lot of different ways of expressing my kind of dissatisfaction with what I was being presented as society and my choices, you know, and I started listening to the John Peel show, you know, and you know at night. And I think about it now, I'd listen to my one little wire earphone when my parents thought I was asleep, listening to all the latest kind of music, you know, and collecting records and trying to go to gigs. The thing was, as I said last night, you know, when I was like 13, 14, 15, I was very small. That's why my name was Midge, after Mary Mungo and Midge, like the little mouse. And so I was buying the Enemy and Sounds and Melody Maker, I think it was in those days, and I was obsessed by music and particularly of Susie and the Banshees, but I could never get into the gigs. I'd get to the door and I'd be in the queue, heart pounding, boom, 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 sorry, no, you can't come in, you're too young, you know. And I remember the very first gig of a band called the Pedestrians. I don't remember nothing about them, I just remember it was the first gig I was successful at getting into, you know. And it kind of changed my, being in that, I felt like I was in a kind of a movement, you know. And that kind of, I don't know, I didn't know loads of people like you in the same way because I was much younger in those days. I was only like 14, 15, 16. And so I was quite shy and I was kind of, but I was so into it. You know? Yeah, it changed my life at the time for sure.
A lot of people seem to connect, you know, just once they've got connected, just going to a gig. I don't know, I mean, it's really, a few people have mentioned this, going to a punk gig and seeing everybody, and you know, it created something in their head, and I was kind of thinking, well, if you went to see Led Zeppelin or something like that, would you get the same buzz, or would you get the same buzz going to see, well, any band other than a punk band, would you get?
I mean, you might have done in the 60s with things like the Doors and the Jimi
possibly.
Hendrix Spirit, where there was like, you know, these people really expressing themselves. But I definitely felt that, and when I was going to gigs and you'd see all like, you know, there'd be certain kind of prominent punks, you know, the well-known ones, and also like, you know, going to the gigs actually, and the feelings I felt when, say, Susie and the Banshees played certain music that I idolised, like, you know, if they played a song that I really loved, it would be almost like a religious experience to me, you know. I would be high for days afterwards, just the fact they played Love in a Void as the encore of us, or, you know, in some gig, you know. So that was and I remember feeling when I was around 16, just like, you know, if I didn't have this band, what did I have in my life, you know? That was kind of like my everything, you know, that whole thing.
Well, it's very powerful. I mean, obviously my well-documented man was Adam and the Ants. Talking about the punk movement inside, did you think, I mean, in the media the punks were often portrayed as, you know, horrible, obnoxious, pogo, spitting, people who were causing trouble basically. What are your recollections? But also in the outside world there's a lot of racism and homophobia and all these type of things. What are your recollections of the punk movement? Do you think all those things were part of the punk movement, or did you think the punk movement was trying to deal with some of those issues maybe? Or
I think a mixture of all of that, to be honest. I mean, you know, it's like, because in those days it was the Teds before, right? So when the punks came, the Teds didn't like the punks, and they were like obviously a kind of a threat to society in its kind of current situation. So they were met with a lot of hostility, I feel, you know, like, so there was fights between punks and Teds in the early days,
as well,
and skinheads, yeah. So it was kind of like they immediately, just by the fact that they stood out from others and were kind of presenting a different version of reality, was met with hostility. So that was an element of defence, I think, more than anything. You know, there was a frustration and an anger about the way society was and how we were being controlled and manipulated and restricted, and, you know, that as a youth with testosterone, you know, and feeling of, you know, family, that you actually had some power with your friends, finally coming out of school where you're completely powerless, just being controlled and conditioned. You know, I think it's natural, you know, you coming out and you're saying, hey, I want a voice in life, you know. So, and sometimes that creates conflict because we're saying, I'm not going to stand for this, you know. But I don't think it was a violent culture as such, you know. I mean, it got into that sometimes. You go to gigs and there'd be fights sometimes, and, you know, but it was kind of, I didn't think it was real. My perception of it wasn't really that it was violent, but that it kind of was born into a situation that created aggression around it.
Well, I found punk, I mean, Bradford in particular was very multicultural. In Bradford we were like Asian punk, Muslim punks, Indian punks, black punks, Eastern European punks. All the gay community got on board, the lesbian community got, basically anybody who was an outsider kind of all gravitated towards this kind of banner which was the media called punk. And, you know, and a lot of people thought it could be a way of uniting people, because there was a lot of, like I say, a lot of disaffection out there with people. People didn't feel connected to the society we were living in. They were looking for answers. And what I loved about the punk music, just the broad range of people who got on board, and it was a vehicle for people to come together and try and work out where they need to be or what they need to do, and I found that a very powerful thing, mate. And when punk kind of finished sort of 79 onwards or whatever it will be different for everybody. I missed that, I think. What other questions? Did you think punk actually changed anything? Long term, short term, anything? Or was it, do you think it changed stuff on an individual basis?
I mean, everything has its effect, you know. Nothing, you know, a butterfly doesn't flap its wings without having some effect on the environment, you know. So for sure it had an effect. In terms of a kind of long-term, profound effect, I don't know. I think it's part of a procession of the, you know, of the youth finding ways of expressing themselves, like in the same way as in the late 60s. You know, we all thought the world, well, I was certainly a few years old then, but, you know, it seemed like from the people I know from those times, you know, they all felt like the world was going to completely change as a result of that. And then, you know, 30 years later, most of them, a lot of them was working in banks and doing normal stuff, you know. And I just think it's one of those things that what happens in our lives at different times, we need to express ourselves in different ways. And, you know, like in the day, I would go on marches on the street and go hunt sabbing, and I would really be very vocal and active about my kind of, you know, activism, basically. You know, and so when we're in that state, that kind of cultures can emerge that express that. I think even the rave scene kind of did that as well.
Yeah, I saw a lot of connections between that and the punk scene.
Yeah, you know, so I think it's, and then as we get older, you know, there's kind of our mood changes and we offer our service in different ways, you know, and maybe those things come back and maybe they don't.
So punk was like the start of that journey. Because a lot of people I know got into punk have evolved into similar sort of vein things, you know what I mean? So some of them went down the traveller route and stuff like that. Yeah. Activism's another way. Some people went down the spiritual route, but very few of them that I can remember. Well, I'd say a good proportion of them have carried on with that. Some people blended back into normal society, but a good proportion of them have, you know, it's been an evolution from punk onwards, and it's about serving communities or just trying to make a better, being a better human being and that. And I was wondering, you mentioned the 60s there, I think that was, because I think by the time punk had happened, they never trust the hippie and all that sort of thing. That I think that all kind of fed out of the fact that all the original hippies in the 60s, particularly in America, I think, all ended up running the country, or a lot of them. So and even though I think the hippies and the punks are ideologically compatible, I think a lot of people saw the hippies as traitors to what they was trying to do initially. They got sucked up in the system and ended up running it all.
Isn't it amazing though, when you think about it though, like, you know, the time between Jimi Hendrix and the Sex Pistols is like 5 years, man, you know. It's only 5 years, you know. That's like, it's like nothing. And in between that time, like musically and kind of culturally, we had the whole of funk. Do you know what I mean? And that whole kind of jazz funk scene all happened in between there as well, like
Northern soul and reggae.
So
and
it's like,
sorts.
and so it's kind of, it's actually a very small period of time actually. Yeah. You know, yeah, that always kind of just blew my mind, that like how different, you know, when you think about like someone from 1970 to someone from 1976, for instance, you know, in terms of the way they express themselves, it's completely different, a completely different expression of it in such a short period of time.
I mean, that period though, if you look at it from a point of youth and what was going on out there, I mean, there was so much going on. You got skinheads, Teds, mods, hippies, northern soul, funk. I mean, as a kid growing up, there was a lot there to feed your mind.
There was, yeah,
musically.
Yeah.
Whichever, I mean, I don't know what's going on musically these days. I do hear there's certain things go. Punk's apparently quite big underground, but you've actually got to go find it now. It's not something that get advertised. I know a guy in Bradford who promotes these gigs, and it's quite it's an evolving or re-evolving. It's very political and quite underground and not easy to get into. It's not something you're gonna come across it word of mouth or somebody's
right.
Yeah, it's not stuff that gets advertised all over town centre with posters and stuff like that. For how I've been aware of it. And just going back, you mentioned something last night that I'd completely forgot about. That I was in the first band that you ever was in. I do remember having a drum kit. I don't remember being able to play it that well, but
No, you can play it.
I don't even know where that. I think I bought that drum kit off a friendship. It was a red one, and I don't know. It's not the easiest thing to lose, a drum kit. So I've no idea of where. Did you say you still got a picture of this?
Somewhere, I don't know.
I'd really love to see.
Yeah,
this
it was a very old, little, very faded picture.
Right.
I remember you were wearing dungarees, that's for sure.
That was the King Kurt period then. I didn't mind getting them messed up. So, how did Fire and Ice? How did that come about then?
Fire and Ice. So how did that come about? So after that rehearsal that we had with you and Steve, Alvain was like, right, because he was kind of wanting to do something, you know. He was like, this is obviously not going to work.
That's fair enough, got to be honest.
It was in Elephant Castle we did.
Yeah, yeah. I bet we were in our flat.
No, it was in a rehearsal studio. It was in a proper rehearsal studio.
I know where it was. We used to get stoned out all the time, and yeah, I remember that one.
So he had a couple of mates in Bromley. Tony Devereaux.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Billy.
Billy Morrison.
Billy Morrison, or Billy Bowden he was called then.
Was Billy from Bromley?
Yeah.
I remember him living in Maida Vale, but I didn't mean.
Yeah, that's right. Later we lived there, because he got involved in a girl that lived up there.
Yeah.
So basically, then we went to Greenwich, had a rehearsal with these two guys. It was happening, you know. It was just I was pretty amazed at the time because I couldn't play. Well, I knew a couple of notes pretty much, but somehow I was in the band, you know. And Tony could play the drums, and Billy, seemed to me, I was always amazed by him because he seemed to be able to play any song.
Yeah, he looked a good guitarist.
Yeah, you know, I didn't at that time. I had no concept that, you know, it's quite easy to learn to play songs that you just think, oh, it's either a C, F, G, it's one of a few chords generally. I didn't know anything about it that day, so I was quite in awe about that. And so I felt really fortunate we was in this band suddenly, and it was like, because before then I was just idolising bands, you know, I didn't play any music, you know, so it was just like really my first foothold into that. And it went through a few incarnations. I can't. Do you remember Dave, the drummer? We had this guy Dave, didn't we? Because after a while, Tony, can't remember what happened, but Tony left. And we had this other drummer, Dave, and that's when we kind of started doing more of the kind of gigs that where it was all happening. That was basically, it was through Alvain. He was on it.
He seemed to me the one that was really wanted it. He was Billy. I got the Billy. He could play. I thought he was the one. What's the word? Disciplined, or he's the one that had the vision. I think Alvain. You know.
Yeah, he had ambition.
That's the word, ambition.
He had ambition in a kind of a different type of way. You know, Billy definitely had it. You know, he was always going to be a rock and roll superstar. Oh yeah,
he had it all about rock and roll.
It was like that from the beginning. He was like, you know, he changed his name from the beginning, you know, into kind of after Jim Morrison, and had this whole thing going on, and with all the whole heroin, and you know, this whole the Lou Reed kind of like that whole deal kind of thing going on, you know.
I thought all that were negative though. I remember, you know, there was an incident backstage at a gig where some girl came backstage, and I think he was jacking up or something.
We didn't like that, you know. We weren't into it, you know. He was the only one into it. Nobody else got
he's doing really well now. I spoke to him. He's got some size super band in LA or something where all musicians like R.E.M. or Billy Idol or Steve Jones, whoever's. They all come and play with his band in LA.
That's right. It's called Camp Freddy, right?
Yeah.
That's what I looked at that, and I was just like, you know, occasionally I start looking up, see if I can find anyone how I contacted with you. Well, I looked him up, and I was so happy for him, you know, because he was playing on stage with all the people that he idolised as a kid, you know. And they were just like all doing it together, and I just thought that's so brilliant for him.
It's great to see him doing well. I spoke to him, like I say, we organised the Matthew Ashman tribute thing, and he played Matthew's role in all the bands. And it was just really nice to see him, and seeing him doing well, you know, that cheered me up. It was we had a good chat and stuff like that. Going back to Marsh and Dance, I was going to say Fire Night. There were obviously a few memorable gigs. I mean, we were talking last night about. I asked if you actually remembered that gig at Stoke Shelley's.
Yeah.
And then I said, do you actually know the significance of Shelley's? Because it was like the mecca for rave music. all the top DJs, Sasha and all that lot, they all cut the teeth at Shelley's in Stoke. But you were the first band to play that venue when they opened it up as a rock venue.
Yeah, right.
And you said you itched it to this gig. I thought you came up in the van with us lot. But you said you itched it there. And,
that's right.
And I remember, you could tell they were quite a bit novices at putting gigs on because they just let us have the keys to the food compartment. And we were just cooking loads. All the scampi went in about 5 minutes. And
that was the wrong band to give that.
Well, they just let us have free range, really. And I remember when the gig started, and you walked on stage. What did you do? Did you trip over some wires or something? And it fused the entire gig.
The whole lighting rig fell down just behind me. Do you remember?
Yeah. All I could hear were you laughing. And the whole place just went dark, and I could just hear you on stage laughing. Were you the support band though?
We were the support band.
Who were headlining?
I don't remember.
But I can't even remember seeing the headline band anywhere. I mean, they were an headline, but they didn't get any food because we ate it all. We got there at silly o'clock, I think, like 5.
Yeah, we were really.
And they said, look, we don't know how. This is this first gig. We don't know what happened. Oh well, we usually get a rider and we usually get some food, so they like give us keys to. We just kind of ransacked the place.
I can't believe they just let us help ourselves to like their supply, but I guess that's naivety. I bet that never happened again.
Well, you learn. It was a bit. In retrospect, it was a bit. At the time, we loved it because we didn't have a pot to piss in.
I know.
So anywhere we could get food or drink, we were going to take it. And another gig we were talking about last night, as we were reminiscing, was the Exeter gig. Do you want to talk about that? Do you mind?
Sure, yeah.
When we got what were we doing in Exeter bus station? I think we were lost, weren't we?
What had happened was from what I remember. We were driving. We didn't, unbeknown to us, we were driving down the road the wrong way on a one-way system, and. I don't know, must have been about 9 of us went there in the van or something.
There were plenty of us.
And loads of us, and all the gear and a bike.
We were doing bucket bombs, I think, as well.
And a bike from the.
Oh, we had the pipe, didn't we? We had the big pipe thing.
We had this. A lot. We had a long. A beer. What do they call these things called?
I forgot.
Yeah, plastic, and we had a little pipe on the end.
That was the bucket bomb then, wasn't it?
No, that was the different thing. No, we weren't doing those in the van, were we?
I don't know. I just remember. I think we were stationary, lost, and whoever was driving, who would have driven? I can't remember who used to drive.
Was it Lanky?
Might possibly, Lanky. And we're all off his heads. I just remember the van just full of smoke, and then there was a tap on the window.
I just remember this guy standing in the middle of the road like this, a policeman, as we were driving down, and we were like, what? I didn't even know if it was real or not, if we were like hallucinating virtually, and then when he said kind of open the window
and all
we
the smoke poured out and it like nearly knocked him off, and then they ended up taking us to the police station. They said we're going to strip the van down. But I remember you walking in and you had your drawer in your hand and you slipped it under the counter.
I did, yeah.
So when we got in the cells and they searched us and stuff like that, none of us had anything on us.
But the funny thing was, it was like, it was in this kind of crinkly Woolworths plastic bag, right, in my pocket at the time. Very audio. And I'm sitting at the kind of window side. There's someone sitting in the middle, and there's a policeman's taken over the van, is driving the van, right. So I've got to get this out of my pocket somehow. I managed to get this thing out of my pocket down my trousers. So when we all go into the police station, then they say, we're going to strip search you all, right. So then I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this? So suddenly, I don't know how, while we were in the queue waiting to be strip searched, I managed to put it under the counter of the police.
I remember seeing you stashing it.
So no, I got away with that.
And then as we're going, you picked it up on his way out. Yeah, he picked it up on the way out because I remember, and I thought, how lucky is that, man? There was how many times is that going to happen when you're going to get searched in a police cell where you've got to actually give you somewhere to stash your drawer, and then you pick it up as you're going out. And then they took the van to bits as well. I think we were in there for ages.
Yeah, we were in there for ages, and all that came from that was out of that whole thing.
The pipe, probably.
Yeah, it was the pipe. That was the pipe. They got me for the pipe, and I had to go to Exeter police to court like some months later.
What happened to that?
I never went.
Oh, did you?
I just.
What? So they're still looking for you?
Well, I don't know. They're not looking for me. They just let it go, I guess.
Another gig we talked about last night was the what was it, a charity gig at the Brixton Town Hall. And
yeah.
that was, I still have nightmares about that. I mean, the gig, that was with Cowboys International, which was Steve Diggle's band, I think, out of the Buzzcocks. The gig was quite a good gig, I remember.
Was polystyrene playing there as well?
Oh, shit. I've got the ticket for the gig somewhere. I'll have to check that up. But she wouldn't have been playing as polystyrene, probably. Marion, her real name was Marion, I forgot what it is now. Because she was doing, I think she, after punk and all that, I think she was carrying on with all that.
It was a Christmas thing. Yeah, she was in that phase at the time when she played up there, but maybe it was a different gig.
Right,
I don't
possible.
remember.
I'd have to check.
Up there.
But we were talking about the black guys who tried to mug the promoter. They said the money's all going to Africa, and these two black, why they decided to mug the promoter in the middle of the venue, surrounded by loads of people, only they know. But the gig had been really good, and everyone was. I remember everyone being quite drunk because the beer was really cheap for some reason, and the guy kept having to go at the back to get more beer because I don't know. Everyone would seem to be drinking more than normal, whether there was some kind of substance thing going on. Everyone's speeding or whatever. I don't know, whatever. And the promoter gets mugged in the middle of his own gig by these black guys, and the guy I tried to stop them. What was that?
Oh, she said to do something out there in the kitchen.
I went to the aid of the promoter, and this black guy hit me with a piece of 4x2, and I trapped it in between my arm and whacked him around the head with it. But it wasn't as simple as that. I did say something which I shouldn't have said, and this Asian guy was stood next to me. I went, no, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean it in that context. Anyway, we ended up bringing this Asian guy back to your party, but I kept thinking about this guy that I did with the 4x2, and I went out there about 2 hours later and he was still there on the floor, man, and I thought, I'm going to end up getting done for murder here, man. I went over there, and by this time there was just the ambulance crew, and nobody knew I was. The guy was still unconscious, but his eyes were like, like they have in cartoons now, his eyes were like going around like, and I thought I'd actually killed him. That terrified me actually, because first I don't want to be killing anybody. Then you don't want to be getting locked up for life for something that should have been avoided, and it made me wary of sort of outward behaviours. Being a bit more. I was a bit more aware. I was drunk off my head. Probably had some substances as well, and it kind of put me off doing that a bit after that, because I thought, on a different day I could have been locked up and lost my life, I suppose, after that, just for something that shouldn't really have happened, but. Anyway, is any we were talking about the Zig Zig Sputnik gig as well, weren't we?
I was just going to say about that, and around that time when that happened with you there.
That was their first gig.
Not the Zig Zig Sputnik, I mean in the town hall there, also this was around the time of the riots as well, as far as I remember, and there was a lot of kind of
tension and stuff.
There was, I mean, I actually remember John Clubb, me and him out in the riots at that time, the second one. So I'd forgotten all about him. When you showed me those pictures of him last night, I was like, God, yeah, amazing. I just remember him running with a TV, it was like, we just went out and it was like, oh my God, there's petrol bombs everywhere, and kind of, it was pretty, like a crazy time in Brixton though.
I spoke to John about that, and I can remember this incident, because I was at Ellen Road. It's really weird, all the places where there've been riots, I were always at Ellen Road. I missed every riot. But I remember coming back on the Sunday home and the streets were just dead. But when I got back to our house in Lambert Road, John had been arrested. I don't know if you were with him that time.
I was with him, yeah.
And he said to me, and he said there were some undercover policemen behind him. And they were when the people started ransacking this shop, there were policemen at the back saying, quick, pass us the TVs and the bikes or whatever they were getting nicked. So John passed them something. He didn't get in the shop. Somebody passed it behind to him, and he passed it on to the coppers behind him, and he got arrested for rioting, even though he didn't physically get in and do it himself. He just passed it over. Stuff was getting passed back, and he passed it back to, he said, an undercover copper who then went round to our house and nicked him.
I have a whole different memory of that.
Oh, what do you remember? It could have been a different time.
I remember him running down the road for TV, I seem to remember.
Well, selective memory then. John, we need you to confirm it.
And the police running from behind him, and me like, I just have a framed memory of that. It might be complete fabrication. He probably remembers it better than me. It was him that got arrested.
It could be me getting it wrong, because he told me this at the time. So, you know, we're
I
talking...
remember it all happened at the back of Woolworths. That was where it was going
30
on.
odd years ago. It's hard to be sort of precise. It'd be. I'm going to ask him actually if that's the case, because I could have got it wrong and mixed it with something else. But is there any standout gigs for you then? Oh, there's the Zig Zig Sputnik thing.
Yeah,
That was their first gig. Zig Zig Sputnik's first gig at Croydon Underground, and I remember Mick Jones was pulling.
Were they supporting us?
No, they were supporting you. Zig Zig Sputnik was supporting you, and Mick Jones was trying to get it changed so you'd be supporting them. And I remember having an argument with Mick Jones. I said, "Look, with all your backing, they're going to be they're going to be a big band anyway. Why would you know? Just because of who you are, why should you get top? These guys have been playing for a while now. Why do you want to take that chance off them?" And I just thought he was an arsehole, quite frankly. So anyway, I was in a bad mood and arguing with Mick Jones, and but you went on then, you did really well. I didn't really think much of the Zig Zig Sputnik, but
No.
I have got the video, and I'm going to try and I might be able to transfer it straight from VHS to.
I'd love to see that. Yeah, for sure.
It's not very close. I mean, well, you get an eye. The songs sound good. Is there any gigs that stand out for you? Either Fire and Ice gigs or punk gigs or what's?
I mean, in terms of punk gigs, not specific gigs apart from particular Susie and the Banshees gigs, because they were my they were the crown jewel of my kind of gig going. But you know, just frequenting the Music Machine quite a lot there.
You ever sneaking over the roof?
No, but the first ever gig I tried to get into there was Susie and the Banshees on the Happy House tour in 1980. See, I'm after your time, you know. And I got there so early, I was there like 2 o'clock or something in the afternoon, you know. I managed to find my way into the venue, and I watched the sound check and everything, and it was just like completely epic. And it was just like about 10 minutes before door opening time, and I was hiding up by a fire exit, up some stairs. And I hear these people walking up the stairs, and it's these 2 big bouncers, yeah. And they're like, "Oh, what are you doing up there?" "Oh, I was just looking for the exit." "Oh, there it is." Open the door, out. Oh man, and there I was outside, but at least I saw the sound check.
What was the cultural makeup of your? Did you go to gigs on your own, or did you have loads of friends?
Yeah, I went on my own.
So there was you. And did it take you long to? Did you find punks friendly when you started going?
I was a bit shy, really. I didn't really have many friends. The only friends I really had was like, if I was like going to things like, you know, because I go to Susie and the Banshees, I would go on the tour, you know, and so I would get to know the roadies, and I get to know you always start with the t-shirt people. That's who we'd always get to know first.
Yeah.
You know, and then then you know the roadies, and then before you know what's going on. So I kind of knew people in the crew of more than anything, you know, more than people, and people that would regularly go to those gigs, I'd kind of connect with them, but I didn't have a group of people I was going with.
Right, I'm looking at questions on that. So Susie would have been your role model, I suppose, wouldn't you?
Well, she was definitely, they were definitely the kind of band that I was most into.
I mean, I thought punk was a very unifying time. You know, a white working class background from up north, you were expected to just follow your dad down to the mill like everybody else did, and then suddenly by attending these punk gigs, the whole world opened up for me.
Yeah.
You know, the only people I ever met from outside of my area was at football matches, which tended to be a very negative experience because we were just beating shit out of each other, quite frankly. But then, you know, to go to gigs and then meet other football fans as well from Middlesbrough. I had a lot of friends in Middlesbrough, Norwich and London and places like that. And when I started meeting other people, I just realised, not just English people from you know, our own cultural background, but people from other I just realised that humans are pretty much the same the world over, really. We're all looking for the same things. We're all looking to fit in or find something that nourishes us or something that, you know, gives us a reason to get up and live and stuff. And I found it a very unifying time, the old punk thing. You know, women in particular. I mean, when was there a time when women could actually get up and sing on an equal footing with men in punk bands and stuff like that? I think it tried to break down quite a lot of the taboo subjects, sexism, racism, homophobia, all this. I just saw everybody as... The Muslim punks were a bit different, but the only thing I thought about them was they didn't drink. That was the only difference I could see with them. You know, we're pretty much the same people except for they didn't drink. You know, that was the only different part of their culture. But I didn't. When I saw people from there, I didn't look at them and think, "Oh, you're Yugoslavian or you're bloody Muslim." Or I just saw punk rockers. Yeah, even the colour didn't even really matter. I don't think. I just saw. But that family.
The colour kind of made more of a feature than anything. It wasn't like. Do you know what I mean? It was like, you know, it was a special thing almost. You know, in that environment. But
I just thought we've got so much to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And I always remember this conversation with one of the Eastern European punks from Bradford. I think it was Jules, who lives in Boston now. And he said he never felt part of British culture because he was never allowed to feel British because of his ethnic background. I can't remember if he was Serbian or Latvian or one of them places. And he thought punk might be a vehicle where there were all these young kids from all these different cultural backgrounds looking for change and how we can change society and make it. He thought punk could be an avenue where he could actually finally connect to his culture of birth and mix it with his ancestral culture. He was trying to find peace with the society he was living in. He wasn't allowed to feel British. I think he thought with the punk movement he might actually find some kind of peace or kind of an home or some resolution to that question. You know what I mean? And I've always remembered that. I actually asked him on Facebook and he couldn't remember it. Which I was hoping it was. I think it was him, but you know. Right then, we're coming to the end here. Have you still in contact with any old punk friends and that? I mean, when did that connection kind of break, the punk thing? Did you?
My kind of connection to London altogether had kind of broken down. You know, over the years, for some years I kept. I'm not kind of a person that kind of generally keeps much in contact with people once I move on.
Right.
You know, I
like going
to,
forward rather than going back.
I do tend to. I mean, I like, you know, nostalgia causes me to look people up. You know, I love nostalgia. I love the feeling of it. But you know, I'm kind of a person that does something and kind of moves on. You know, I'm not in a cold detachment way. I just like my life very full, you know, so I don't have a lot of time for like so many social connections outside of what's going on around me and the immediacy of what's going on, you know.
Well, I look at it. To me, we're like brothers and sisters, and there's no kind of time scale. I still feel about them now what I felt then, but I don't feel the need to be in their environment all the time. When I'm travelling about, I generally know somebody in that area, and when I'm in their vicinity, that seems like the appropriate time to connect with them because I'm there, and you know, and then when I'm in that zone, who is it lives there? I can go see them, you know, because not every.
Yeah.
We seem to have less time now for some reason. I don't know why. All we did back then was hitchhike to gigs or get in van. We're just all gigs. Now I don't even have a chance to get. I mean, I went to see King Kurt the other week, which is always nice to catch up with Smeg and all that lot.
Where did they play?
They played in the Brood and L Rooms in Leeds, which is a really good venue actually. But Smeg was really poorly. I went to see him in the van before the gig started. He was struggling. He looked really ill. I can't remember what he said. He had flu or something. And but when he went on stage, and then I think he just become that person. You know, he just switched and he was, I'm really ill today. I shouldn't have been doing this gig, but fuck it, let's get off of it. And you know, and he did all right, but there were times where I was looking at him and he looked like he was just going to fall on the floor. You know, because we're not young people anymore. Are we?
No, that's right.
You know, we're all like 50 onward. There's nobody under 50, I don't think.
That's right.
Well, you're probably one of the youngest. What, you're 53 now?
Yeah.
So you're probably one of the youngest. The people who caught the punk thing, sort of like 76 to 82 or whatever, or 80 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You were probably the back end of that. So
that's right.
There won't be many people younger than you, I don't think, who saw any of that lifetime ago. Right. Anyway. Yeah. That's about it, I think.
It's quite amazing, that, isn't it? Just like. You know, now it's like, because inside, apart from the kind of reality check I get from my body, inside I don't feel older, you know. It doesn't, but yet we are, you know, so, you know, it's extraordinary, isn't it, how we've all aged. I mean, it's like how so much has happened in that time.
I mean, you look quite well.
Yeah, I'm okay.
I never thought any of us would get to 50, to be honest, if I'm honest.
Well, we thought, in those, I remember, right, do you remember Mojo?
Name rings a bell.
Mojo, okay. There was a time, something happened in his life, and he managed to. He was always trying to look for a woman, but he never could get a woman. And he got off with this woman that was 51 years old, right? And we were all like, you know, jaw drop, like it, you know, it was almost like necrophilia. It was like an old person, man, you know.
Mm.
And like, so anyone over 50 in those days was like it's like grandparents material, you know. And then here we are, you know.
Grandparents.
But you know, I don't feel like, you know, I don't have that feeling of kind of. I mean, I have some feeling of maybe maturity through life, but I still feel very youthful inside.
Yeah, you look quite young. You look quite open. But I think we all, a lot of us don't look too old. I don't think we look as aged as some of us.
Yeah.
Mind you, that's.
Well, grey hair would do that for a start, you know, straight away.
Right. Well, anyway, cheers for chatting to us.
Not at all.
It's nice to catch up. Actually, I can't believe it's 32 years since.
I know.
But again, it's been a pleasant experience, hasn't it? It just feels like back in Brixton. Even though it's 32 years, it hasn't felt awkward to me.
No.
You know, it's been quite easy to talk to you, just like I talked to you back then. That's why I mean, time doesn't have that kind. But I understand it does with some people. You know, you don't see for either the same person. You know, because it's a long time. You don't know who you're meeting, do you?
That's
but
right.
It's been quite easy to. It's been sort of, what's it where you just sort of like just feels not
Gliding in
back to normality. Right, cheers.
A good one.
ELAHN.
I'd love to get hold to see Bruddy and
Yeah.
Dave as well, man. You know, I spoke to Bruddy and he said he saw Dave just last week. Like, it's still like see.
Is Dave Noble back in Norwich?
No, they're in London.
Oh yeah, Bruddy's back in London. Isn't he?
Yeah, they're both in London.
Yeah, I don't know what's been going on with Bruddy. I've heard some
What
bits
have you
about.
heard?
I won't do it on camera because I'm going to
No, of
upload
course,
all
yeah.
these